Edinburgh, 1888. The old town slept beneath its own breath, a perpetual miasma of coal smoke, fog, and memory. Even the cobblestones seemed tired, worn by centuries of footsteps, whispers, and sins. Dr. Alistair Reid often said the city had two faces, one for daylight, where science reigned, and one for the night, when the ghosts of history reclaimed their streets. He preferred the former, but the night, well, it was patient. Reid was a promising young physician at the Royal Infirmary, trained in the sharp edges of modern medicine. He studied the brain, the electricity of thought, and had little patience for superstition. And yet, logic was failing him now. For across the twisting wynds and alleys near the grass market, people had begun to fall, not dead, not unconscious, but into a deep, unreachable sleep. A fishmonger, a student, a seamstress. Each found slumped where they stood, eyes closed, breathing shallow but steady. The newspapers gave them a name, the sleepers of Auld Reekie. Reid watched the latest victim wheeled into the infirmary under flickering gaslight. Sir Charles, the head physician, sniffed dismissively. "Hysteria," he declared. "The poor have weak minds. They've simply decided to quit life." Reid disagreed. He saw something deeper, something systematic. The body alive, the mind elsewhere. Constable McGregor, a broad-shouldered man with a gentle skepticism, handed Reid a scrap of damp parchment. "Found this tucked in the jacket of the third sleeper," he said. It was a map, rough, handmade, showing a subterranean layer beneath the old town, tunnels, vaults, sewers, and in the center one small, circled point, marked only with a strange symbol, an open eye. That eye haunted Reid's thoughts for days. He saw it in ink blots, in candle flame shadows. Was it a warning? A location? A mind's echo of something real? As the rains returned and another sleeper was found, he began to suspect something unthinkable, that the sickness was both chemical and psychological, a union of poison and fear. He called it sympathetic suggestion. The mind, primed by centuries of superstition, had learned to collapse on command. But to prove it, he needed to step beyond the body, into the mind itself. The fourth victim was a young seamstress named Elspeth. Her hands were still calloused from work, her pulse steady, her sleep absolute. Reid proposed an experiment, a radical one. He would not wake her, but ask her unconscious mind where it was. They placed her in a quiet room, curtains drawn, lamps low. Reid's voice dropped to a rhythm, a measured, pulsing cadence that matched her breath. He did not command her to wake. He only whispered, "Elspeth, tell me what you see." For hours, nothing. Then, at last, a whisper. "The eye. The damp stone. I can't leave the eye." She described tunnels, dark, wet, alive with dripping echoes. A sealed chamber behind a baker's cellar near the high street. It matched the mark on the map exactly. Reid shuddered. He wasn't sure whether he was listening to her mind or the city itself. With McGregor and two watchmen, Reid descended that night beneath the South Bridge. The air grew colder, older, their lanterns painted trembling halos on walls slick with time. They found it, the forgotten cellar wall Elspeth had described. When the bricks gave way, a gust of stale air escaped, the breath of something buried alive. Inside lay hundreds of rotting burlap sacks, each split, leaking a dark residue that smelled faintly sweet. Chemical waste, long forgotten, but still, alive. The fumes curled upward, unseen, not deadly, but narcotic, enough to send a body into dream. Reid stood in that dim chamber, notebook trembling in his hand. The riddle was solved, and yet it felt hollow. For the mind of the city had done the rest, woven myth and fear into flesh. The gas poisoned the body, but history told it how to fall asleep. Days later, the sleepers began to stir, blinking, confused, alive. Reid visited Elspeth last. She woke with a quiet gasp and whispered, "It's gone now." The eye is closed. He smiled, though something within him remained uneasy. Science had won, yes, but only by acknowledging the mind's power to obey its own myths. In his journal that night he wrote, "The city sleeps when its past grows too loud." Perhaps we all do. The next morning, the Scotsman published its verdict. The true and commendable solution lies in straightforward historical science, the paper declared. The discovery of chemical waste beneath the Southbridge vaults has resolved the malady. Yet one must deplore the scandalous methods of Dr. Alistair Reid, who resorted to hypnosis and other mystical follies unbecoming of Edinburgh's physicians. They mocked his cartography of the unconscious. They praised Sir Charles, who called it all hysteria. And they warned that science must not be diverted into the dark labyrinth of the mind. I confess, dear listener, I can almost hear Reid's quiet laughter when he read those lines. Reid replied in kind, "Science is observation, not obedience. When the body yields no clue, the mind becomes the only map. Hypnosis, far from parlor trickery, allowed us to access the truth, not through dream, but through disciplined inquiry." He argued that the sleepers were victims not only of poison, but of centuries of inherited fear, that the fumes triggered the flesh, but history told the brain what to do with the fear. He ended simply, "To ignore what the mind reveals is not science, it is cowardice. The citizens are safe and the danger is contained. That is the measure of integrity." The affair faded from headlines soon after. But some nights, in the mist above the high street, you can still smell a trace of that strange sweetness and see the faint glimmer of lantern light beneath the stones. They say Dr. Reid continued his studies in silence, charting dreams, fears, and symbols, the secret cartography of the unconscious. And perhaps, dear listener, it is fitting. For in a city built on layers of forgotten rooms and buried streets, the mind itself could not help but follow suit, tunneling ever downward into the quiet places where history still breathes. Range day, silence.